the rate of change right now is like steep, like it's accelerating. Like we're not just seeing small changes with technology. We're really going to see radical changes.
Hey everyone, this is Kyle Walgren, and yes, this is another episode of the Business of Education. Today our guest is Dr. Peggy Semingson. She is an associate professor of TESOL at the University of Texas in Arlington, our great state of Texas, and a leader in the digital literacy space. With a deep background on online course design and literacy, Dr. Semingson is dedicated to helping teachers thrive in our digital world. Her research and award-winning YouTube channel has over 2 million views, which makes complex ideas accessible for educators everywhere. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So I got to spend some time on your YouTube channel. It looks like you believed in digital learning before it became cool.
Exactly.
So what got you into education? What made you go that direction? Was it something you knew early on? What took you down that path?
Yeah, short answer, I have been in education since the late 90s. I just turned 51. It's been my career, lifelong career. I was a philosophy major in college, didn't know what to do with it, became a K-12 teacher in Southern California. It was tricky to pay the bills on a school teacher salary, so I moved out to Texas, especially in SoCal. So I moved to Texas and kind of pursued higher ed and evolved into becoming a professor.
That's awesome. Digital literacy can mean, a few different things. If you look at it, what would you classify digital literacy under? Is it just the use of technology to learn how to read? Is it the use, or is it the learning of technology? How do you classify that?
Yeah, it's kind of both. So digital literacy skills go beyond literacy, like navigating information, knowing misinformation, disinformation. Those are really crucial skills. We want students to be digitally fluent, and younger people, generally speaking, are more digitally fluent just because they were born into it, unlike people my age, that in between space. But digital literacy also applies to reading digital texts and understanding digital texts, which are sort of coming at you pretty fast. They're usually multimodal, like your podcast. You've got video going, audio. It's got it all. And so being able to read and listen beyond just the printed word in books.
That's awesome. So the reason I started these podcasts is because I actually grew up as what I would classify as like a non-reader type person. Mm-hmm. And then when COVID hit, I had 4 kids and I wanted to make sure that they didn't go through the same struggles as I did. Yeah. My story is a little different because I'm an entrepreneur. I build businesses. That's what I've done my entire life. But I couldn't find a product that would really fit a non-reading parent to help their kids. And at that time we had sent all our kids home. So I created a company called Edsoma that kind of follows a lot of the things that you've talked about for 13, 14 years. And that's why I wanted to have this conversation. But I saw a video early on of you guys using an app 13 years ago with what might be your daughter teaching sounds and letters. How have you seen digital literacy tools progress over the last 15 years?
Yeah, so there's just a lot of options out there, I think, for people. As far as that was my niece, Naomi. She's now like 16. But yeah, it's amazing. So I think there are a lot of tools for early literacy, like learning the alphabet, just kind of basic stuff. But then, young people themselves can create media and things like that. So like even first graders can create a podcast and that type of thing. Whereas, when we were young, that was kind of unheard of. So I grew up with cassette tapes and VHS and a little bit stuff like that. But they're doing video games. I mean, there's just so much to becoming literate for them. And there's so much more tech out there.
Your videos reminded me very much of like the early Jordan Peterson type lectures, which I'm a fan of Jordan Peterson, and his idea around making sure that education is optional for everybody. I really like that, and it looks like your videos kind of focus that same idea. When you decided to build a YouTube channel, what were the hurdles then? Because like you said, kids today have their own podcast, but back when you
Mhm.
started it,
Mhm.
what were some of the challenges you went through with that?
I think just being kind of alone or a pioneer in that space, and even now there aren't a ton of higher ed people on YouTube,
Mm-mm.
which is yeah, it's surprising. So I have found other colleagues on YouTube, and we've mentored each other. So I think just being a you're a pioneer, so just being a pioneer in that space and not having any guidance. I had no formal guidance. I still don't really get credit for it at my job. It's like gravy. It's like something I do as a hobby, but to me, it's important. Like it's global. I'm doing a lot of outreach to people globally.
Yeah, I can't stress that enough. Like putting a platform for people to understand things that they have questions around and making those resources free have been a tremendous
Mhm.
value for myself. That's how we
Yeah.
found you.
Okay.
And our primary focus is finding thought leaders in the space focused on literacy, expanding literacy skills throughout the United States. And that's why this podcast has become important to us. And on the plus side, it brings brand recognition to the things that we're doing, and it has helped us grow our business. That being said, do you feel like kids coming out of COVID have maybe experienced any type of screen burnout? Are you seeing them spend more time with digital literacy tools? How did you map that going into COVID and now coming out of COVID, and what have you seen in that
Yeah.
process?
Yeah. So these are generalizations, but I think the type of instruction that went on during COVID was really hit and miss, maybe a lot of miss. Districts just weren't ready for that. I mean, they had print, they were sending home print things. People didn't have access to tools. And a lot of parents wanted good quality, like at home instruction, or at least access to tools that they could help their kids with. We're seeing an increase in homeschooling, people who
Mm-hmm.
want to homeschool their children. And so I wish that districts, and some districts are, I wish districts would become more responsive to that, like providing more tools. I think we had a bit of a backlash against online learning in general after COVID, but at the same time, people are demanding it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Some of the things that, we get messages all the time like, oh, how could you put literacy on an iPad? Kids are already spending too much time there.
Mhm.
But the way that I look at it, that technology isn't stopping, so we can either embrace how our kids use it and provide them more valuable tools and give them
Totally.
access to things that are going to do it, but they're going to find time to spend on that device. So we might as well give them better things to spend their time on
I
with
agree.
that. And that's been
Yeah.
my motivation. What are some of the emerging trends that you've seen in digital literacy that you think teachers should be prepared for in the next coming years, and how to utilize those tools?
Yeah, there's a lot. I think one of them is video gaming. So like using gaming with learning. That's been around for a while. So like people have leveraged games like Minecraft, to teach learning, and things like that. So if teachers and educators can leverage student interest in gaming, I think that's a really good one. Making gamifying learning, using learning games. That's going to really appeal, especially to learners who maybe have shorter attention spans or just want, they find school boring and they
Right.
need some high interest. And we can do that in higher ed too. And then the other trend we're seeing, of course, is AI. So ways that we can use AI, like machine learning. I saw something, virtual tutoring with machines and AI, even for young children. I don't think that's a bad thing at all whatsoever. I don't know that we need a human being all the time in front of us.
No, I can't agree with that more. Tutoring is a very expensive thing that a lot of students need.
Yeah.
So, although at this very moment in time, AI is expensive to operate, I do see those costs coming down and then
Mhm.
making tutoring more widely available. But I also, where I really like AI, and I'd love to hear your thoughts, is I think that the idea of customized learning paths is going to be
Oh,
so
yeah.
much easier for the
Totally.
individual. How do
Yeah.
you see that scaling and growing in the future?
Yeah, that's been around a while. So, like, where it's responsive to the student's input. If they're struggling with reading, it can give them an easier passage and that kind of thing. It can correct their feed, correct them and so on and so forth. And we're seeing that in the ESL space, like apps that correct pronunciation. That's really
Mm-hmm.
helpful. And I use tools like that with my students in higher ed. So I have them read something give a presentation on PowerPoint, and there's a built-in AI, tool called, I think it's called Rehearse with Coach or Speaker Coach, and it assesses them and gives them feedback in real time and a report, and it's not something I can do. So I think all that kind of real time responsiveness and then the kind of post like feedback report with assessment data is really helpful to learners of all ages and parents.
ESL has become a very interesting space for us just because we create, like I said, I created my program for my needs with my children. We were just lucky that it took weight, and now we have districts like New York City
Oh,
public
well.
education using our program. But we started to see downloads globally with our product, with ESL parents coming on to use a product like ours to learn how to speak English better,
Mhm.
communicate better, and bring more resources to their children.
Mhm.
So the ESL opportunity, I think, is really growing within the literacy space. But you've done work with lots of special population groups, like ESL, with like dyslexia. How do you see educators using technology to better support those groups at this time?
Yeah, so I've done research talking to like Latino parents, and they are learning English. A lot of them, some of them are learning English alongside their students. So, like you
Right.
mentioned, the whole family can benefit, and I think that's what's important. Is like when you use technology at home, sometimes people that are literally nearby are listening and learning also. And so I think that's the beauty of the tools is that it's not just it's a eco an ecology of learning with them. So that's what's important.
No, that makes a lot of sense. You've got a background with curriculum development. When I looked at our program, I keep circling back. I built Edsoma for why I believed I didn't get into reading and why I didn't become a better reader. And as we were doing our market research, we found that Charlotte's Web and Old Yeller were still books that were very much being used in schools today.
Mhm.
Do you think that there is maybe an opportunity to grow literacy skills faster
Mhm.
by having tools outside of typical curriculum opportunities to use to help these kids engage in content that speaks to them better, maybe,
Yeah,
and have a broader range to content?
I know exactly what you mean. Yeah, especially with male, boys, they generally don't, they have different reading preferences. So,
Hmm.
but kids in general have very, nuanced reading preferences. They might want to read short stories. I had a professor at UT Austin named Joe Worthy, and she, kids like to read horror stories, and these aren't found in classrooms. And she read a book called, or article called "What Johnny Likes to Read is Hard to Find in School." And the whole point was these kids didn't hate reading. The kind of books they liked and materials they liked just weren't the ones they were reading. And so I think when we find these alternative texts and engage them and hook them, then we create readers. I think shorter texts are good. I
Hmm.
think multimodality, like audiobooks, books where it's maybe has pictures and it's narrated with a voiceover, just kids want that now. They don't necessarily want to read a print book, and print books, honestly, are kind of going away.
Yeah, I can very much see that. And we're you're starting to see some schools adopt the idea of digital opportunities a little bit better, and I think the reuse of it, obviously devices or hardware devices are expensive
Mhm.
still, but they are becoming a better price. But the thing that I really like about digital literacy is there's tools and components now to answer a question that I think teachers have asked for 100 years.
Mhm.
How do you know a student's reading?
Mhm.
Well,
Mhm.
with technology, we can now see that a student's using and engaging in the content and focus
Yeah,
on the areas of the content that they're spending their most time on and
exactly.
develop and build content for those individual students
Mhm.
to keep them engaged. The
Mhm.
one thing that I will tell my kids is, you may not use science or social studies the rest of your life and your career, but you are never going to get away from reading and math. So you might as well
Mhm.
figure out how to do it and do it really well, because that's something you're going to use the rest of your life no matter what you do.
Yeah.
The role of social media playing in building interactive, supportive communities for educators and students. Obviously, you were a pioneer of that. You built
Mhm.
your YouTube channel.
Mhm.
How are you seeing that grow, and how are you seeing it help teachers in today's spaces really advance their skills around
Mhm.
literacy in other areas?
Do you mean my YouTube channel in general, or?
YouTube, your
Yeah,
YouTube channel, but maybe other YouTube channels or other social
yeah,
media outlets that you've become really
perfect.
high on.
Yeah. I think, a lot of teachers are looking beyond their schools and even local communities. And like I said, looking globally. For a while, teachers were looking on formerly known as Twitter to connect with others, doing Twitter chats and things like that. And I think teachers are now looking across social media for ideas. So, Facebook, Instagram, I would even say Reddit. I have colleagues in higher ed that use Reddit quite a bit to connect. So I
Interesting.
think, yeah, just out of the box places. And we're not really leveraging social media too hard. I know in my field, higher education. But teachers are definitely looking online for answers, and tools and resources, and then plugging into like Adobe, Microsoft, Apple Educator, getting micro credentials through those. It's just possible to get trained through these companies themselves.
The that's all super valuable. The thing that I've noticed, especially like in the homeschool population, is that they're really like leveraging things like TikTok for
Yeah,
motivational ideas to engage kids
totally.
within classrooms. And we're
Yeah.
seeing a whole new opportunity uh, and ideas of how to teach kids and engage with them. Some good, some bad, but ultimately the access to new ideas has become way more readily available.
Mhm. Mhm.
What are one of the things, we touched on AI briefly. What are the one of the things that you're most excited about to see AI and how it can help grow the literacy space?
Yeah, I think just helping as far as teachers, that's kind of my area. Just helping them plan lessons, and troubleshoot, and just it's kind of like a personal assistant for educators. It's built into tools like the one that I was talking about with PowerPoint. So I think just beyond just Chat GPT and chatbots, I think just looking at ways that AI can be integrated kind of into tools, or how it's being integrated, is great for planning. And then students can and families can also use it, like when with the apps that we were talking about for reading, or as personal tutors.
Right. No, that's awesome. As somebody who's won multiple awards teaching, what's some advice that you can give maybe the younger generation uh, to use online tools or to be really expand or open minded to some of the things that they're going to see come over the next years
Yeah.
in the education field?
Yeah, I go back to this idea, that the rate of change right now is like steep, like it's accelerating. Like we're not just seeing small changes with technology. We're really going to see radical changes now, as I'm sure you're aware, now and in the future. And so I think just being open minded to that rate of change is important. Have conversations, like talk to people about what they're doing with AI and where they see it headed, and just learn as much as possible about, I think, AI in particular with teaching, and then also not be threatened by it, because sometimes teachers, librarians, they kind of may feel threatened, like what is my role with machines, but just like learning how to interface with machines and how they can maybe help us.
No, I love that, Dr. Semingson. I always end the show with a question around networking. We have a lot of young teachers, young entrepreneurs
I love it.
that are just coming into the space, and I felt like one of the things that I've been able to utilize the best to help grow my knowledge in the space is network.
Mhm.
Could you give us an example of how you utilize your network to be able to expand your career and maybe, some advice to the younger population on how they
Mhm.
should be able to utilize theirs to grow their opportunities?
Yeah, I think social media, becoming visible and influencing. So I was just on an award, a list of 30 ed tech influencers by Ed Tech Magazine. And that was based on my podcast and my YouTube channel, and just the way at the rate I disseminate information. So just put yourself in visible places, create a YouTube channel, just take the initiative. A lot of young people are already digitally connected, so just
Hmm.
leveraging those tools and being a content creator, I think, is really great. Being on podcasts, things like that.
I think content and content creation is definitely the way of the future, especially
Mhm.
for at the at home learner or the ultra curious.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of podcasts that I watch, almost religiously because they provide so much good information. So diving into that podcast network has been super valuable for me. Building a YouTube channel, isn't easy. It's sometimes very intimidating. And when you don't see the views or the growth that you want, that you ask yourself, why am I doing this? But consistency is definitely going to be something that people need to do in that. And it's valuable in every consistency is valuable in every aspect of your life. But Dr. Semingson, we love what you're doing. We need
Okay.
more people like you. And we are
Awesome.
so grateful for you to spend some time on the show today. And we look forward to sharing your information. If somebody wanted to reach out, get more information about what you're doing, how would they go about doing that?
They can Google me and find my email through UT Arlington, or just email me at peggysemingson@gmail.com.
We'll put that in the comments below, and we'll make sure that everybody has access to your YouTube channel in that as well. We're looking to grow the education space to the best of our ability and promote great leaders like yourself. So, Dr. Peggy, thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you.
Talk soon.